Welcome to the 69th episode of First Read Ultimate Spider-Man podcast, where we break down Bendis' iconic run on Ultimate Spider-Man, issues 1 through 160 in Earth 1610. I'm Zach, and here's Johnny.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing swell.
Okay, I've been waiting all week
Lot to talk
to
about.
hear about this injury that befell you at the at the show that you went to this past week. Of course, on last week's episode, Zach told us he was going to a concert, and he specifically told us he was going to a concert without Shyla. And we may have even said, "Don't get hurt." So let's hear about it.
If only there was precedence for this in history that maybe we could have learned from or talked about.
Yep.
Maybe multiple occurrences to really hammer home the point. So this past weekend, I went to Tied Down in Detroit, which is like hardcore kids know, like the event of the year for hardcore right now. And
you are a hardcore kid.
Yes.
That's your nickname, actually.
Well, okay, yeah. To people like you, my normal friends
Zach,
call me
the hardcore kid.
Hardcore.
Yeah, Zach, yeah.
Anyways, so I'm at the hardcore event of the year in Detroit, Michigan, and it's spread over 2 days, and there's about 40 bands. And John, when I tell you for the first 39 bands, I was the most restrained,
it's always
reserved
the last one
person. I even paid more for a balcony pass, so I'm standing up in a balcony watching my friends up on the floor.
Zach, when I was in maybe maybe younger than that. I think it was like third grade. When I was in third grade, I was riding my bike down this really big hill on a walk with my brother and my sister and my mom. We were all on bikes. And I said, "One more, Mom, please." And she was like, "Okay." And I, of course, broke my leg on that one.
My God.
Right. And my mom taught me a lesson I'll never forget. It's always the one more. It's always the last one that you're gonna do. That's in everything, right?
That's so true, bestie. When I was a kid, I went to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio with my family.
And you'll go there again as a linebacker years from now.
I keep telling Shyla, I'm 28. Do you think my window is starting to close?
There's this guy on TikTok or YouTube Shorts that's like, a day in the life of a 32-year-old who's trying to become a professional basketball player. And he's like, first at the gym, I get 2,000 shots a day. Then I take a nice ice cold bath. And it's like, dude, you're not going to make it. You're a really good shooter. You look like you're a beast at basketball, but I don't think so.
Yeah, that's funny. So we're at the practice field outside of the Pro Football Hall of Fame where people can just throw around with their kids. And we're doing just that. And another family comes up and has two sons who are a couple years older than me. And they actually play football. But we're close enough in age. Everyone's like, okay, hey, let's join up and play a game against each other. This family against this family. And
how old were you at this part?
Middle school.
Okay.
7th or 8th grade.
Okay.
So they might have been freshmen in high school. And it's at this point it's two-hand touch. But then my dad says, "All right, last play, then we got to get out of here. Tackle him." And when I tell you, John, I was at the time influenced my game from Bob Sanders.
Yeah.
So this kid that's bigger than me,
human bullet
that actually plays football, is barreling towards me, and this is the last play before we go home. And I have the chance to tackle him. And John, I summoned all my bravery, and I jumped headfirst into his skull like a spear.
As Bob Sanders would do.
Literally. And that worked about as well as you'd expect. I did take him down. I made the tackle. I was really proud of that. But I also cracked my skull and was bleeding from the head on the field.
Oh my God, dude. Are you serious?
My little sister later told me she was looking around the ground for my eyeball because there was so much blood she couldn't see my eye
Oh
and
my
thought it had popped
gosh.
out. And it was funny. My dad carried me into the emergency room and like kicked the doors in like a TV show. And he's like, "I need help." And they're like, "Yeah, take a number." And we sat for like an hour. But I got staples in my head, and that was on like the last play, quote
Oh
unquote.
my gosh.
That's like the first of my notable
That
injuries.
is awful. That is awful.
I actually thought it was sick. I wanted someone to
No,
realize
dude,
he was
that's
sitting exactly like Y.A. Tittle. You know that old picture of him and his face is just caved in and he's like on the ground? I was recreating that on a football field because I was a nerd and I was like, I really hope my mom snaps this hard pic of me right now.
Oh man. Yeah, he kind of like that. Does kind of look like you.
You just pulled it up.
Bald ass.
Well, this was middle school, John. Give me some credit.
Zach, although you do have a luscious head of hair going, you're not bald. You're not a bald ass. That's what I said about Y.A. Tittle.
Gotcha. Uh-huh. Anyways, so I was really good.
Yeah, I want us to speed up to present day here.
The first 39 of 40 bands of the weekend, but the Sunday headliners is Have Heart, and they're reuniting for this. This is their first Midwest performance in 15 years, and I've had this planned ever since the fest was announced. This is why I've been going to the gym, was so that I could pit and stage dive to Have Heart in Detroit, Michigan at Tie Down Fest.
Wow. Oh my God, dude.
And they're about to start. I'm like 4 people from the front row, from the stage. And I've got my game plan. It's going to start. Crowd's going to get tight. It's going to surge forward. Everyone's going to be crunched.
Okay, what shirt are you in? Because I'm sure you're in a band t-shirt. So what? I'm just trying to set the scene for the listeners.
What shirt was I wearing that day? The Casper fight scene?
Okay, I don't know. You said that like it was a question to me.
I think it was. I think it was the Casper fight scene, who I'm actually seeing
so are people
on Thursday of this week.
I know. Are people drinking at these shows, or is it one of those things where it's like you're all like you're like going too hard to even like be boozing hard, you know?
Yes to both. I mean, they sold alcohol. There was a bar. I'm sure it did well. But this was also a straight edge band, a straight edge hardcore. Have I explained straight edge to you?
Was that like Christian?
This is going to be another rabbit hole. There's a subculture within hardcore that is trying to reject like punk stereotypes and like negative things that become normalized. And so they are like super militantly pledged against drugs and alcohol, and it's like a lifetime thing that they take on, and it's called straight edge. And this headline,
well, that's a bit judgmental from them, I think. You know,
not really. I mean, can't be a thing, but most straight edge people are cool.
Okay. I'm just, okay.
Anyways, this specific band, like, not drinking is kind of their thing. So that's like the fan base they attract. But anyways, it's super compact. They're about to start. I'm like 4 people from the front row. I've had my game plan in mind for months.
Yep.
I'm gonna push forward, first song in, get on stage dive right.
First
song. I'm going to get it out of the way because remember, I haven't stage dove in 2.5 years ever since the incident.
Well, that's why it seems like you
cracked my head. I crack my head a lot, John.
Yeah, dude. It seems like, I don't know. You need
like,
some more milk in your diet or something.
I'm lactose intolerant. I'm just
okay. It seems like if I hadn't stage dived in a while, it might be stage dove. Oh,
dove.
That's gonna. I'm not sure if it is. That's gonna. The English teacher in me is having a conundrum here. Okay, I'm gonna move past it. All right. So I would wait until people are going, right, and then I'd go into the middle. I want to be the first stage dive of the show. They might not be ready for you yet.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what I was going to do. When I say first song, I think I left out an important part, which was This is like the biggest band in hardcore reuniting for the first time in like 5 years. This is what happened. They turn off the lights and they're like playing some like recorded poem. And then the lights start strobing. And at this point, they've played like one note. Like you've just heard one guitar down pick, like, and all of a sudden, there's people jumping on my head that I can't see coming because of the strobe lights. I'm like, okay, I'm a pro. I'm used to this.
Yeah, okay.
Get my hands up so that these people don't just like hit me with their boots or skull right on my noggin. You know, hands up. Okay, whatever. Crowd's
Dude,
getting
man. You know what? I'll just say it, Zach. These people who are like jumping on top of others in a pitch black environment. I don't care. I don't care what the you know, oh, it's punk, it's whatever, it's the culture. Someone could get seriously hurt.
Yeah. And I'd be liable to agree with you if my backup plan, if I couldn't get to the stage for this set, had been to use my balcony pass to jump off a balcony, do a 2-story dive. Because I wagered the crowd would be so compact, people couldn't even move.
No, that would not be. Okay. So how'd you get hurt? So what happened?
Okay.
Don't dive off a balcony at a future show, Zach.
All right. So the lights are strobing. My hands are up to shield my head, and I'm pressed up against someone so tightly on like the left side of my body. Okay? I can't move at all to the left or the right or forward or back. My hands are up, and there's like 3 stage divers coming from 3 different directions at any given time, and there's people climbing up over my back trying to climb their way to the stage.
Oh my gosh, this
is
awful. This is
30
awful.
Seconds in,
I would hate this.
And some guy, I can't move my arm at all. I can't lower it or move it forward or backwards on my left arm.
Oh,
and
no.
Some guy jumps from the right onto my bicep with like all his weight. Like I'm the one catching him. It's not dispersed at all. And I hear a crunch in my arm and shoulder. And I instantly know like that's not a regular hurt. That's a bad hurt. And I like hold my shoulder and try and turn around and like fight my way through the crowd to get out and get myself to the medical tent or room, I guess. And they check it out and they're like, it's not dislocated, but we would get x-rays on that. And I was just so sure because I could feel something popping and moving in my arm. I thought it's like some kind of fracture. There's like a chunk that was taken off of the rest of the bone, but I can still move my arm and stuff. Got home. Oh, actually, that's not where the story goes.
You know, that's so lame. You got hurt and you didn't even get to stage dive.
I didn't. There's a part of me that wishes I had like turned around and fought forward and done one dive with my arm like that, and then that theoretically it might have been easier to get out of there if I'm elevated than if I'm fighting through people.
Theoretically, maybe since you got hurt doing the stage dive, maybe it would like push the bones back together if you hit it with enough force.
You know, that
diving
makes sense. I agree with that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, I did something bad. Whatever it was, that's not normal hurt. And John, it's important to note that this story takes place in Michigan, not Indiana. Okay, so the law looks differently on different things.
Yep.
If you catch my drift. And It's like the next day and we're leaving and my arm and shoulder still hurt.
What, you didn't go to the doctor?
Not in Michigan. I'm going to come down here and do it.
Okay, so it's not like insanely hurt.
No, I kept telling people, they would ask me, what is it on a scale of like 1 to 10? And I said, it's a 5, but it's a constant 5. It's not getting better. And I can tell it's like a 5 that's deeper than skin. It's like I can feel something misfiring or like moving around whenever I feel that 5.
Well, that's probably never getting better, Zach. Welcome to being an adult here. My shoulder's been in constant pain for like 6 years.
Yeah, this is the start of mine.
Yep.
Thank God it's not my throwing arm though, because I can still make it to the NFL with one good
Yeah,
right arm.
that's true. And
Yeah,
and you can play with a torn labrum. I did it for like 5 years. It's fine.
there you go. Um. So, anyways, I get a little something for pain and inflammation,
Okay. That
and
does nothing.
okay,
Oh, I thought you meant like you got ibuprofen for pain and inflammation.
no, I got the Michigan stuff,
Oh, okay. So how is
and
it?
well,
So
I've had
Zach, you're not normally a stoner here. Maybe we'll
no,
so
experienced it once. I'll say fully, where it actually like I felt anything, and that was like one of the worst nights of my life.
yeah.
So we're 0 for 1 at this point, and I don't know how this one's gonna hit me, but I'm like, it can't get much worse.
Yeah. That was when I gave Zach a pen and then he passed out in the bathroom and we called an ambulance for him because I thought he was dying.
We might want to save
And
the
then
real
my buddy
story
and
for
then
the end.
and then my buddy Mikey and I won beer pong.
A night no one would forget. Um. Okay, so we get it like at the border, and then
Yeah,
immediately,
whisper. The cops might hear.
and then immediately go over into Toledo, Ohio. And my buddy was dumb enough that he didn't realize he would have to take off Monday for work. So he's just like working out of a hotspot in his car as we're driving and is like, well, I have this meeting at 1, so we got to find somewhere to pull over. And I'm like, I'd prefer it to be like a Books A Million or Barnes and Noble or something, and you go to a cafe and I get to like look around. And so we find a Books A Million in Toledo, Ohio, and he goes off to the cafe to take his little business call. And I, took my thing and just started walking around, looking around the Books A Million. And I'm like, man, this isn't doing I think I'm just immune to this stuff. And then I'm like, wait, why am I standing in front of Good Housekeeping magazines and how long have I been here? And that was my experience for like the next 2 hours that felt like 4 hours. And
Wow.
I bought a lot of cool stuff. It was interesting. I was just like grabbing the weirdest stuff, and I'm like, magazines are so cool. Why don't we ever think about magazines anymore? Why aren't I subscribed to more magazines? They have them for everything now, except for architecture, because I almost bought an archaeology magazine.
Oh,
by
I bet they've
mistake.
got architecture magazines.
They didn't at this Books A Million. And
Wow.
then I'm like looking at like manga, and I'm like, man, maybe if I was more open minded, I would like this. I should probably just give it a try and not think about like
What's manga?
stereotypes, like the anime comics.
Oh, you should read some Jordan Peterson. He's great.
Does he have that?
No, I don't know, but he's every time I go into a Books A Million, I always like
Oh,
or a Barnes and Noble, I always find myself like just looking at Jordan Peterson's books and just like laughing to myself as I flip through them. I'm like, how do people read this stuff?
what a dumb.
That's
Um, but yeah, so I'm like looking around, and all of this. It's just the most peaceful experience, John. And I'm losing track of
Yep.
time, and
Yeah,
all
it's
of
fun.
these.
It's fun putzing around a bookstore, especially a little stoned.
I sound like such a 15-year-old. Like, man, it changed my life. But truly, it's my first experience I remember. So, anyways, I'm walking around this Barnes and Noble or Books A Million, and everything I see looks interesting and cool. And I end up buying like
Oh my
$150 worth
god,
of
dude! Oh
magazines,
my god!
X-Men action figures, and like 2 graphic novels.
Nice. Okay, what were the X-Men action figures and what were the graphic novels?
So this was really funny. I posted this on r/X-Men, but they had like Vulcan, Corsair, Maddie Pryor, and Jean Grey action figures. They had like almost the entire Summers family, except for the ones that you would expect to be made into action figures. They had no Cable, Havoc, or Cyclops.
Huh. Okay.
So I took a picture of that and then bought those, and I got do you know who Corsair is? Cyclops and Havoc's deadbeat space pirate dad.
Nice.
So that's pretty funny. So I was like, I gotta get an action figure of this guy. He's a space pirate.
That sounds awesome.
Um,
Does he have a snake logo in any way? Is anything about him a snake?
he looks like this.
Okay. There's a throwaway thing in Doctor Who where there was a Time Lord named the Corsair, and his calling card was Ouroboros. Do you know what that is? The snake eating
he
its
was
own
in,
tail.
Loki.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the snake eating its own tail. That's what an Ouroboros is. But anyway, not the Doctor Who space pirate, I guess.
Okay. X-Men space pirate.
The X-Men space pirate. Okay. And then what graphic novels did you get while you were high off your ass being a detriment to society?
They were things that were recommended to me by someone that weekend at the festival, and then I ended up seeing them like buy one get one 50%, and they were both already only $10. So it's Batman: The Court of Owls and We Have to Get Out of Here, or We're Never Leaving Here, or something. It's some like post-apocalyptic story of like brothers on the run or something.
Cool.
Yeah, so excited to read those.
Okay, so how was your first weed experience?
Pretty good, and I gotta say, I'm kind of enjoying my second one now, too. That's why we're 23 minutes into this episode and haven't even seen what John has to say.
Well, you had a lot going on. Well, I'll say there is some good Doctor Who going on, Zach.
Yeah?
It's not like world-breaking television, but it's
oh my
fun.
God, I'm so sorry. I forgot to watch that.
I know.
episode.
I knew you would.
would.
It's okay. No, it's okay.
I had a lot going on, like you said.
There's been some fun ones this year. It's not I like the characters a lot, and that one that I wanted you to watch, it's just a good one, and I want to hear what you have to say about it. And then this last one that they just did was or not the last one, but the one from last week was like Doctor Who does Black Mirror. And at the beginning, you kind of think it's like, oh, social media bad. Wow, this is incredible. Who would have thought? But it actually is, pretty good. It's better than what Black Mirror has been recently. And
well, that's exciting then.
I know. You should get into it, and so should the listeners. And then there's another BBC show that I've talked about before called Inside Number 9 that I just realized it has come back on. So I need to get caught up. And it's in its 9th season, and I think that it's the last season. And I actually believe the series finale might be coming out either today or tomorrow. So I've got to get caught up on that. And it could be fun if you watch that also. But if any listeners want to watch that and write in, I kind of like talking about these things. I don't have any British friends to talk about these shows with.
Surely we have some British listeners. Write into John. Be his friend.
Yep. And don't call me Shirley.
Oh my God, I get it. That's an airplane reference.
You called me Shirley. You said Shirley.
Well, I didn't realize that I had said that either. I did want one addendum to my story. I don't think it ended truly at the end. When I got back home, I went to the doctor. I got an x-ray. It's not the bone. It's something with my muscles or tendons for sure, but it's not the bone.
Okay, dude. Well, here's what I'm going to say. I actually am glad that you said that. Definitely get an MRI because like I said, I had my labrum torn for years and years and years and never knew because I could do everything and the pain was constant, but it wasn't like, right, I could throw a football and I could still do everything about my day, and it doesn't show up on an x-ray. And I went to chiropractors and like PT and I went to a bunch of different places and they were like, oh yeah. And then finally I got an MRI done. They were like, you need surgery. You've needed surgery to fix it for 4 years. That's why nothing's fixing it, So definitely get an MRI done and just make sure that it's not something you need surgery to fix.
Every business says they're better. But the ones that earn and display the BBB seal back it up. It instantly identifies businesses that are committed to operating with integrity, honoring promises, and telling the truth. Makes you wonder why every business doesn't have it. So look for it, because it's looking out for you. That's why it's the sign of a better business. And find a better business anytime at bbb.org.
Do. It's the Better Business Bureau music.
Yep.
Okay, and we're back. Thanks for sticking around. John, we're getting back into Ultimate Spider-Man. This is exciting because we're getting into a new art era, but there is one little thing I need to give us some context for. So around this time, there was a limited series in the Ultimate Universe going on called Ultimate Powers, and I read it so that no one else has to. I'm going to explain the little bits that you need to know about it. It's unclear when it's set because Peter appears to still be dating Kitty in it, but it has to take place after the Clone Saga for Nick Fury reasons. So that's a little strange. And then Greg Land is the artist, and he's kind of notorious in the industry for drawing every woman over sexualized, and also he traces other people's art, which is kind of like
man, you don't ever see that with other artists. I'm glad you specifically said that.
Well, his
specifically put him on blast for drawing women like that.
A, I will get to it. He's like the worst offender in Big Two comics, but B, he literally will trace over porn. He'll trace over like still frames from pornography.
I've maybe heard about this guy, and then just like
draw a little logo over a naked body. Yeah. And I bring this up because he's a creep in this series. In like the first...
I think I was talking to Shyla about this when we were at Comic-Con like months ago, and we were just like walking past places. And some of the action figures or like the comics that they sell, it's like, dude, kids are walking around here.
They're 1,000,000% meant for gooning.
Never ever heard that term before.
Oh, it's real big these days.
Okay.
Everyone's a gooner now.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, but anyways, I bring this up because Greg Land has the worst panel of all time in this comic. In issue 1, he gets like a full upskirt from the front and back of Kitty Pryde, who's 15. And that's like the center of the image. And also another thing about Greg Land I learned from this series, he's apparently from Terre Haute, Indiana, where I went to college. And in one panel, he draws someone standing in front of the Indiana Theater, which is a real place in Terre Haute that I used to pass every day.
Terre Haute is the meth capital of the country. At least it was back when I was dating a girl from Terre Haute in college.
Yep, I believe it. And then the reason I'm bringing all this up, the biggest impact from this series.
Yes, why are we talking about upskirts and meth here, Zach?
Nick Fury loses control of S.H.I.E.L.D. at the end and gets sent to another dimension to answer for his many crimes.
Ah, that's where Nick Fury is.
Yeah.
Okay.
This was the stupidest.
Well, he doesn't really care that much. I thought he was just going to be off. I thought he was just like out of the building for these 2 issues we were reading. But he's got more important stuff going on, it sounds like.
She's saying that to Norman Osborn because him, he doesn't need to know why he's not talking to Nick Fury.
Okay, so what did Nick Fury do? What did Nick Fury do wrong?
That gets into the plot of Ultimate Powers, which, like I said, is so stupid. I can't follow it. I couldn't describe it. And no one needs to worry about it.
Okay, you've got 15 words. What did Nick Fury do wrong, and who sent him away?
Multiversal heroes for multiversal genocide.
Was Nick Fury responsible for it? That was like 5 words. You had so many more words.
I don't know, dude. It doesn't make sense. It's like, it's just a stupid thing. I'm just saying this so that you know and other people know that Nick Fury isn't in the book anymore.
Well, I don't like that. He was giving us some great, like, content.
I'm sorry. I'll write a letter to Marvel in 2007 and let them know.
Okay, if you could. Okay, all right, that sounds good. Nick Fury's out, and we didn't even get to see it. And okay,
Yep. Anyways, what is this, 112?
yes,
Issue 112, written by Brian Michael Bendis, penciled by Stuart Immonen, inked by Wade Von Gronbadger, colored by Justin Ponzer, and lettered by VC's Corey Petit. So we open on the Shocker, standing in the sunroof of a getaway car, shocking police cars in pursuit. And he says, "Hey, I got one." And a voice off panel says, "I got one too."
Nick Fury and Emil Burbank are taken prisoner by the Squadron, both identified as responsible for worldwide disaster in the Supreme Verse. And then Doctor Doom escapes. So it was like a different universe that blamed Nick Fury and took him hostage.
Yeah, they were like warring with a different.
Okay, I really don't like that now. Where are Ultimates coming to his rescue?
Oh, they tried.
You can't just take Nick Fury hostage.
They battled him and everything. It was a whole thing. It was like 9 issues.
Oh, okay.
But it was really bad.
Okay. All right, I'm off of it. I'm closing out the Wikipedia.
All right. So a voice tells Shocker, "I got one too," as Spider-Man swings in and kicks him in the face. And Shocker drops his vibrating gun, which goes off when it hits the ground and flips a car, sending it flying.
So, Zach, when you saw these people speeding down the street on the very first panel, yelling stuff, what of course crossed through your mind? Escaping from the cops. Because the second I opened this first page, there was only one thing that crossed my mind.
Fast and Furious?
No. Twice as sweet as money earned, baby.
Oh my god. Yeah, this is kind of the growth of that. It's
and
so
the Shocker
funny.
even has like big sunglasses on, so you like can't. Isn't that how they were kind of dressed?
Yeah, well, it's funny.
Twice as sweet as money earned.
Those guys were like peak early 2000s cool, where they're like dressed like Y2Kers and they're on their little rollerblades. This really is the 2007 version of that because they're driving a Hummer.
Yeah.
So the vibrating gun fell off, hit the ground, went off, sent a cop car flying, and its shadow looms over a group of pedestrians that includes a woman with a baby stroller. But Spidey webs it up before it can land on them, and he swings away, saying, "Sorry, that one was kind of my fault." And the car keeps driving, even though Shocker is unconscious, hanging partly out of the sunroof. And the driver thinks to himself he should have just killed Shocker, taken his costume, and done the job himself. When he sees a girl in a strange costume standing in front of him in the road. And he screams as the car barrels through her, but the girl phases through it without moving. And the car comes to an abrupt stop as the driver's head hits the steering wheel.
Okay, so let's rate Kitty's costume here. What do we think?
I kept going back and forth. It is
I like it except for the humongous eyes.
It is undoubtedly distinct. Her head is like an oversimplified square version of like a cat's ears, and they extend over her eyelids. It's pretty weird. The choker is a choice. Everything else, though,
she's a teenage girl.
It looks very like 80s, which I think is like meant to evoke when she debuted as a character.
I like it.
It's not good, but it's the funnest costume she gets in this series. And Spidey swings up and says, "Kitty," and they chat for a moment, and she reminds him she disrupts electronics when she phases through them, so that's how she stopped that car. And he tells her thanks for the team up, and she says she wasn't teaming up. She was just there. She saw trouble. She did her thing. And Peter asks Kitty if she's still mad at him, and Kitty tells him she's not having this conversation here. And Peter points out that the cops are arriving, so they gotta go, and Kitty says, "So go." and he asks if she wants a lift back to school, and she tells him, I'll get back myself. So Peter swings away, and Kitty looks sad.
Once again, I don't think she looks sad. I think she looks resolved, Zach.
She's like biting her lower lip, which can mean a couple things, but I think it's like she's fighting back a pout.
I think she's saying, your web-slinging ass.
That could be, too. I don't hate that. MJ is having a nightmare of herself in goblin form, out of control, killing the Fantastic Four and attacking Spider-Man, when a teacher yells her name, which wakes her up in the middle of class. And the teacher tells her she can sleep on her own time, and then starts talking about a class project.
This scene is where, at least for me, this is the new artist, right? This is his first issue.
Yep. This is Stuart Immonen.
And I think this is the first page where you really notice it. And it's like, oh, what's wrong with our characters that we've known for so long?
Let me go to his defense, because Stuart Immonen is one of my favorite comics artists.
It's not bad. It's just not what we've had for 111 issues, and it's very obvious when you look at the characters that we've been looking at for 111 issues that they're different, and they're not supposed to look the same, because, like you said, you don't want them last week. You don't want them to just copy the same thing.
So I get that it's an abrupt change when the book has had one visual feel for 111 issues, but this is a thing where you say you don't notice it until now. I think that's because what Stuart Immonen is really, really good at, and what suits him well as a comic book artist, is he can do action sequences and superheroes and body language and action really well. He can draw little weird effects coming off of things. His visual style is also really similar to Pepe Larraz, which is maybe my other favorite modern comics artist. And both of them can do these really good dynamic action scenes, but then the further you get out from a human face, the less realism they put into that face. So once you realize that's just part of their visual language, that close-up stuff is what they draw attention to always, it makes more sense, and you come to appreciate it all more, because it's a visual choice. It's not they can't draw more realistic stuff. It's that they are so good at emphasizing the foreground of every image that it really pops in action sequences and then starts to look more normal when you're doing like talking scenes or crowd scenes or stuff like that. So the teacher's talking about a project when Peter runs into class looking exhausted, and the teacher tells him that class started 15 minutes ago, and Peter says he was in the bathroom. And just then Kitty runs in too and accidentally bumps into him in the doorway. And all the boys in the class start yelling, "Ooh," and look who's coming into class together.
I forgot that they went to school together.
Yep, that's a plot point now.
Yep.
And the teacher tells them all to shut up and tells Peter and Kitty to take their seats. And she goes back to explaining the project and says, "You're all parents now." And John, of course, it's that project.
We've got a classic raising a baby doll project.
Yep, everyone knows it. It's where
I thought the same thing.
They have to take home a baby doll to take care of for 3 weeks.
And you know what, Zach? I already know who's going to end up partnered. The second I saw the assignments.
Let's see if you're right.
Okay.
The teacher assigns partners and pairs Kitty with Peter.
Oh my gosh.
And then I thought you would like this as a teacher.
What type of drama are we in for?
I just know this is the type of teacher John's got to be. She asks if anyone has problems with who they were paired up with, and all the hands in the class shoot up. And the teacher smiles and says, "Then know this, I don't care."
Okay, I do like this teacher a lot. And here's something that you might not have thought of, but I think this teacher was trying to play matchmaker with Peter and Kitty.
Oh, I had the thought.
Because she, right before she made the partners, she saw Peter and Kitty walk in, and all of the boys were like, "Ooh, look who's coming in together." There's no way she would. It was just randomly she put those two together after that happened. I mean, maybe she did have the groups like made ahead of time, but I think that she was like, "Oh, you know, these are two." That's what I would do if I were making partners for something, and there were like two kind of dorky kids that I thought had a crush on each other. I'm definitely putting them together.
Well, way to go, John. You're a true bro.
I am a true bro for these kids.
Except you don't want them to get too familiar with you.
No, that's why I put them with each other.
I just know you've been like, don't call me dude. I'm your teacher. Shut up.
Yeah. No.
And I said Peter and Kitty both look like they're going to do a comedically large gulp.
Mm-hmm.
And we changed scenes to the Triskelion where Carol Danvers, who has succeeded Nick Fury as head of S.H.I.E.L.D., is walking to the room where Norman Osborn is being held. And he says he wants to talk to Fury, and she tells him he's not here.
Boy, I'm kind of like spoiling a little bit of these two issues that we're going to read, but you know, I kind of hate that so much of these next two issues are going to be about like Norman Osborn getting his revenge on Nick Fury, and we don't have Nick Fury in this universe anymore. Like, why? I don't understand why Brian Michael Bendis, because I looked it up and he wrote Ultimate Powers too. I don't understand why he would do this.
Issues of it. It was weird. They were like,
because these are really leading up to some sort of a show. Nick Fury doesn't care about what's happening in these issues. If he's in some multi-dimensional prison, you like, not only does he not care, he's never going to know about it, you know? So,
but Norman Osborn doesn't know that.
Yeah, but we do now. And doesn't that take out a little bit of the meaning? And is Osborn when Osborn gets out and he's like, Fury's gonna be so mad, and they'll be like, actually, he's in a prison elsewhere. You missed a lot, man. I don't know.
Yeah, just another reason why that series was dumb.
Yeah.
But Bendis didn't write all of it. It was weird. It's like the whole series is drawn by Land, but it has 3 different writers. They just couldn't nail it.
Has Brian Michael Bendis, I thought about this when I was reading this issue yesterday, has he written every single issue of this run that we've read so far?
Yes.
Apart from the team-ups?
Well, he wrote Team-Up also.
He wrote the 15 team-ups also?
Yeah. He didn't write the Ultimates.
Yeah. That was Mark Miller or Millar.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Continue. Do go on.
Okay. So Norman says he's ready to make his deal, and Carol asks what deal he's talking about. And Norman says Fury offered him a deal in exchange for his scientific cooperation, and he could see Harry again. And Carol tells him...
Okay, before we move on, I'm sorry. I keep interrupting. Don't they mention... Didn't they already mention Magneto in here? Or maybe that's towards the end of the issue. So they do say we have to move some of the visitors down here, but I guess they don't mention anyone by name. I guess that's later in the issue that they are mentioning people. Okay.
So Carol tells Norman she's going to have to pass on that, and Norman says, "Just get me Fury, you cow." And Carol says, "You might have missed the part of this conversation, but Fury isn't here anymore."
Is she? She's not Captain Marvel or whatever her name is. Okay.
And Norman says that being locked up like this is a complete waste of his time. And Carol tells him he should have thought of that before turning himself into a goblin and killing people. And he yells, "Woman!" before and stares at her menacingly.
I think he's a little sexist. I'm getting some sexist tones here. First he calls her a cow, and then he says woman, you know.
I thought he was such an ally to women.
Yeah.
The
Me
man
too.
who killed his wife
Me
and threw a 15-year-old girl off a
too.
bridge.
Yeah,
I can't believe it.
you just never know people.
And Carol dangles her fingers and acts scared and says, woo, before slamming the door. And back at Midtown, Peter and MJ are talking by their lockers about how much this project sucks. And Peter says, how am I supposed to carry a baby around all day? I have powers.
Okay,
And
as we start this
responsibilities.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I'm so sorry. I interrupted you as you were saying that. But as we start this whole scene, with which it starts with that, with Peter being like, I have powers and responsibilities, probably my favorite scene in all of the Ultimate Spider-Man universe. So, let's go through it slowly here, Zach. I'm going to interrupt as you're saying it.
Okay.
First great part about it is that little, I've got powers and responsibilities. I can't do this.
Hey, he said the thing.
It's funny that that's becoming like I don't know, like a joke. Like
he's using it as an
he
excuse.
says it as sarcasm, you know? Yeah.
So MJ throws her baby into his chest and says, why don't you give it to your lunchtime girlfriend? And Peter says he didn't do this, and MJ says she knows. She's not blaming him, she's just commiserating. Or as we pronounce it in the pop punk community, commiserating.
Work
Say
sucks.
it ain't so,
I know.
will not go.
When I was in second grade, we had a special music day in music class whenever we'd get a certain amount of stars as a class, and we'd get to bring in a song and you could play it for 1 minute. And that was my favorite song. And I was like, hey, can I bring in this song? It maybe says a bad word in it. And they're like, what word? And I'm like, sucks. And they're like, absolutely not.
I wonder what word you could have said that they would have approved.
I know. That's what word were they expecting when I said I had a bad word in it? And then what word would they? Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, MJ is just funny in this, right? She's handling it kind of like a champ. She's like, I know it's not your fault. It just sucks. You have to go hang out with your ex. And then Peter's like, okay, because it sounds like you're blaming me. And she's like, that's because you're always guilty about something, man.
They're fun.
Maybe it just sounds like I'm blaming you because you feel bad about stuff like you always do.
I think she's gaslighting him.
No, I think he's got a Matthew Murdoch complex. He's got a little Catholic guilt in him all the time.
When you said that, I pictured Matthew McConaughey, and I'm like, the actor? What's his complex? So Kitty walks up to them and says, hi, do we all agree this is a nightmare? And MJ says, completely. Which is funny to me.
I told you, this is my favorite. Reading this is my favorite scene I've read in 2 pages.
I think it's funny that they technically still haven't even been introduced.
Yeah, that is funny.
They're just this familiar with each other. Kitty says that she'll take the baby and do the project so they can both get a good grade and not actually have to work together. And MJ says absolutely not. With the amount of work it'll take Kitty to make it look like Peter worked on it, he might as well just work on it with her. John, I was lost on this.
Okay.
Is this a teacher thing? How the hell in 2007?
No, dude, this
no
is just MJ being awesome. This is just okay. Well, maybe you were about to say something different.
How did teachers know who worked on what part of a project? I went to school way later than 2007.
They don't. Every single project gets done, dude. I hate
by one person.
I hate group projects. Here's the thing about group projects. Oh, you've gotten me on another one of my pet peeves. It's time for another patented Johnny pet peeve. Every single kid, if you ask them, hey, do you work better independently or as a group? They'll all say as a group, except for the kids who do all the work in group projects, because every single group project is just done by I won't say the smartest kid, but the kid who works the hardest.
Yep.
And then all of the other 4 kids, or maybe like 2 kids do all the work and 3 kids don't, or whatever, they fail the test, right? Because they didn't do any of the work. And it's just not a good way to, like, some projects, obviously you have to do group projects. And dude, I know there's teachers that will swear on them, and there is like new whatever where doing stuff in groups is better for learning and development, and I just don't like group projects, because, and you always know as a teacher which kids did the work and which kids didn't, but it's a group project. So
yeah, so that's why this confused me. I was like, what is Mary Jane talking about? This is how every group project gets done, is one person does the work and everyone else puts their name on it, and that's what Kitty is saying she'll do. And I'm like, why is this?
Well, I think
too hard?
I think MJ is just being awesome here, because it would be really easy for her, because if MJ wasn't there, Peter would be like, thank you, I have Spider-Man stuff to do, all right? And MJ won't like it if we're hanging out, so thanks for doing this. And MJ doesn't give a shit about this project. She is doing a good job here and she even says it later on. She's like, no, you guys are going to do this project together because I trust him, and like, get your stuff done. I'm not dealing with this 3-way love triangle for the rest of my time in high school,
She was kind of even shitty when she said that, though, because she says, I trust you and him. Well, actually, I trust him. I trust him enough to, overcome my not trust of you. It's like she's basically being really and telling Kitty, I don't trust you around my boyfriend, but you're lucky that he's too nice of a guy to cheat on me.
I guess that's not how I read that at all. I don't think so. I think she's taking a more adult approach about this. And
that's
being
good.
Like, and just being like, no, you guys can handle your Spider-Man stuff is not, you can handle a high school project, and I'm not letting you get out of this just because it's an uncomfortable situation. I like her.
Okay, well, good.
Okay, so now let's get to my second part of my favorite scene of all time.
Okay, Flash walks by and asks Kitty if her baby is half mutant. And he says, half mutant, half spaz. A spaz mutant.
He's funny. He's a funny guy.
Sometimes the dumbest ones are. It's not clever, but it
no, I was just joking. It's like the least clever thing ever.
Kong straight up punches Flash in the back of his noggin, and he starts yelling at Flash, telling him to apologize.
He grabs him by his head. I mean, this is a Kong like we've never. This is how we should see Kong and Flash.
Yeah, this is Kong at his most heroic. So he punches Flash in the back of the head and starts yelling at Flash, telling him to apologize, as Peter, Kitty, and MJ watch in shock. And Flash doesn't know what to do or how to respond, so he just starts making fun of Kong, calling him fat. He
goes, I'm sorry, Zach, I'm going to read this entire thing. He goes, Kong is grabbing him by the head, and he says, dude, apologize. And Flash says, what? And he says, say you're sorry. And he says, okay. And Flash says, that's not sorry. And he's still holding him up by like his shirt until Flash finally apologizes.
Yeah.
I love it.
And then Flash says, what's gotten into you, Stay Puff? And Kong says, just sick of your racist man. And Flash runs away, yelling that Kong should have another cookie. He thinks he owned him because he got the last word in.
And then Flash is standing next to Kitty at her locker, like leaning against the locker, like it's like Kong? The most it's like the most classic
hey baby, how you doing?
It is. It's just like he's maybe a little too close and he's a little too big to be leaning over her like that. But she seems like she likes it, so
he's risen her up.
He has risen her up hard.
So Kong asks Kitty if she's all right. And she starts to introduce.
He's like, that's like the biggest fuckboy thing ever. You just go over there. He's like, flips his non-existent head of hair back. And he's like, Oh gosh, you okay? I'm so sorry about that.
Yeah, that's smooth. But then he immediately tries to introduce himself and like forgets his name and trails off staring into her eyes. And MJ comes into Wingman and she tells Kitty, "This is our pal Kenny. He's a great guy. He was in a movie." And
She goes, he's a great guy. She goes, this is our pal Kenny. He's a great guy, but that was truly a historic moment. And she's like, and the way you can even tell by MJ's, the guy who's drawing this, he is getting me, you know. What is it, Stuart Immonen?
yeah.
Because you can even tell. This is what I mean when I say I don't think MJ and was like being bitchy or anything. I think she is the one who like wants the three of them to have that like fun superhero relationship, you know.
This is so funny because I read it differently. I read it as she's trying to pass her this,
but I don't think so.
Hussy who could steal Peter from her off onto another guy.
I just don't think so. Just by her like smile and the way she's like leaning into Kenny, I think she's actually. I mean, yeah, of course, there's a part of her that is probably thinking that, but I don't know. I'm thinking she's seeing double dates in their future. You know,
this is so funny because I'm looking at it as like a skeptic Kitty who has been hurt by these people. I'm just like, okay, what's doing right by my girl?
Well, dude, Kenny and Kitty, I've been calling for this relationship since they met like 2 months ago, dude.
He called it, folks.
The second she walked into the classroom, I was like, Kong and Kitty, get them together.
Who could have expected the writer who has a crush on Kitty Pryde taking his self-made character who looks like him and having them date? Who could have seen it coming?
Who could have ever seen it coming?
I certainly would do no such thing. Kitty and Kong walk away together talking, and Peter says, "Well, look at that. He just stole the mother of my child." And MJ tells him he's funnier with the mask on. That was a good scene. I can see why you liked it, John. That whole sequence in the hallway of the school is just fun.
10 out of 10 flashes punched in the head.
And meanwhile, back at the Triskelion, Carol Danvers is sitting in the command center when someone tells her Osborn's cell has gone dark. And Carol starts to say, maybe it's just a... And she's interrupted by a massive explosion.
And this is where we get all of the people like that. He's like, Magneto, check. Electro guy, check. You know, Otto Octavius, check, right? They're running through all the villains that they have locked up.
And then they're like, Norman Osborn, there seems to be a problem. Maybe it's nothing. And then the building blows up.
Yeah.
So, John, I gave this one an 8 out of the 10 cents that I'd have if I got a nickel for every time Peter was a parent in the last 2 story arcs.
Why was he a parent in the last one? What am I forgetting? Did
Renee
they raise an
Rouse?
egg in the last one? Oh.
Annie Mae Parker, Amp, and she's a menace, just like her dad.
Wow, yeah, that's true. Well, you know what? Let me flip back through this issue and see what I want to give this. Let's see. We had a good shocker scene at the beginning. Kitty Pryde's got a cool new outfit. I will give this one an 8.5 because not that much happened in it. You know, as I'm flipping through it, like it's not that big of an issue, Peter, and they're just most of it is kind of like about the stuff at school. You know,
you don't like that?
Norman Osborn's in the background, like doing stuff, but
dude, all of these scenes were so good for what they like set out to do, which I'm realizing.
No,
you gave it an 8.5.
I gave it the same thing. I gave it higher than you did. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it sounded like you were down on it.
No, I'm up on it. It just doesn't have enough happening to give it like a 9 or a 9.5 or something.
Okay. Yeah, I get that.
You know?
I just think it nails the very low stakes scenes that it tries to, tell.
It does. Okay. 113.
Let's get it.
Death of a Goblin Part 2, written by Brian Michael Bendis, penciled by Stuart Immonen, inked by Wade von Grawbadger, colored by Justin Ponsard, and lettered by VC's Corey Petit. So this opens with Norman Osborn in his cell, and we are reading his internal monologue. And we see his internal monologue in most of this story. So,
which we've done before. We've had Norman Osborn centric stories before where it's told from his perspective, and we're always getting these unhinged little thought bubbles.
But what's interesting is, okay, I'll go through it as it's coming in. But
sure.
So in a lot of so as I'm reading this, I might say like Osborn thinks or mentions or talks to himself, right? Or I might even accidentally say talks. Most of this he's talking to himself, unless I like specifically say something.
Okay.
So the issue opens on Norman Osborn, and he is stewing in his cell about Nick Fury and how Fury has locked him up, and he does his best to oppress him. But now it's Osborn's turn, and we see this is happening as the scene with Carol Danvers is happening from the last issue, where she's like kind of, she's like, "Ooh, I'm so scared," and she waves her arms like Zach mentioned, and.
Which, again, that's another panel I don't think I talked about enough. I love that. That just seems like so funny tonally from what you were expecting in the book. And it feels like something that, I'm not going to lie, only Stuart Immonen could draw that scene like that. I don't think Bagley would have done the same thing.
Okay.
She's got her one little finger down, and I don't know. She's got the sunglasses on. It just looks so cool, John.
Only Stuart Immonen could draw a woman with sunglasses.
And it feel like this.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
It's just a cool panel.
Yep.
Sue me.
So, Osborn, his thoughts continue on the next page, and he's thinking about his Oz formula and how badly Fury wants it. But it's so close to him. And, Fury thinks Osborn's been like helping him, but Osborn's the only one that truly understands it. And he's like, he's thinking this to himself, as I said. So it's constantly evolving, even in his own blood. And he can feel himself mutating and evolving into something different. And he talks about how it's all about like electronic displacement, and something is happening inside him with electricity that he's like, "Are you watching, Fury? Here it comes." And he makes something happen with the camera that's watching him, and he explodes it. And that's basically what happens from the last issue, right, Zach? If you've got more stuff to say about his internal monologue that I skip, you can always do that, because I'm sure I left some stuff out. But
nope.
And we get some kind of cool pictures of like the goblin thing, like mutating his blood vessels from the inside or something. But honestly, this is not a format of storytelling that I particularly like. Where there's so much text, so many text bubbles on the screen, and we've talked about that stuff before, right? It's not my favorite, but it's fine. So Osborn as the Goblin and the rest of the villains who are locked up, who we just heard them mention by name, all of them, right? They mentioned Magneto by name. I'm so certain he's coming. And they're all like escaping, walking around. And Osborn is thinking to himself how stupid Fury is. And as he's like walking past these guards who are like, "Don't move, we'll shoot," he's thinking how like they're completely useless. And he's not wrong. We've made this comment before a lot also, that like the people who work for S.H.I.E.L.D. are useless.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sorry, I was taking a drink. Zach, I need you to jump in more.
I was looking at something. I noticed something on a panel.
What'd you notice?
Do you see one of the people that they didn't mention that's walking out that gets kind of prominent placement in 2 panels.
Oh, gosh, I'm so glad that you mentioned this because I didn't put it in my notes because I always scroll and I figured I'd remember this. Where I need you to join in and tell us about all of these people who are escaping because, yes, there are a bunch of people that we see and I don't recognize any of them except for, I think that one guy's name is Omega Red because he's got a stupid-ass symbol on his head, but I don't even know who that is.
Yeah, there's Omega Red, and then
There's a Viltrumite there next to him. We can see.
oh yeah, I think that's Craven down at the bottom. You can't make out the people behind them. I think all we're supposed to see right there is Craven and Omega Red.
Okay, and then who's the blonde woman? Because you're right, she gets very prominently focused in 2 different panels.
Do you know who that is?
Sue Storm.
No.
Emma Frost.
Thanks for playing. I believe that's the clone Gwen Stacy.
Oh, interesting. Well, surely we'll know that because it'll come back up if it is. They wouldn't show her escaping like that if...
Yeah, so she just walked out.
I wish that they had put something there, especially with the new artist, you know?
I think that's part of the fun.
I never would have thought that.
I think that's part of the fun is some people would miss it and then go back and say,
"No, that's not fun. You can't draw someone who looks completely different and then be like, that's part." I don't know.
That is fun. If Bagley was
they
doing
should have
this
had
issue,
there's 400 million thought bubbles running through the Green Goblin's head. Why couldn't he have one that's like, oh, there's that Carnage woman?
He doesn't know about that. Just like he doesn't know where Nick Fury is.
Yeah.
I think it's fun that you just have to guess, is that who Stuart Immonen is trying to draw right there?
So
And
all
she
of
looks
these
just like her, just in his style.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, that is fun. Well, maybe Gwen Stacy's coming back. That'd be awesome. So, Osborn is internally gloating about how he's like destroying Fury's world. Through this whole thing, he has like little moments where he's like, "Can you feel it happening, Fury? Your world is destroyed. I know how much you care about all this stuff, and they're gonna kill you."
That sounds like a Rick and Morty villain.
And that does kind of. So, and then Doc Ock stumbles upon him. And Osborn is wondering if Doc Ock is going to join him and thank him for giving him the gifts he has. But then Otto instead begins to fight him. And he's like, "It was me that turned you into S.H.I.E.L.D., Osborn, and I gave them your formula." And Osborn is kind of internally yelling at Otto as they're fighting. He's like, "Otto, you dumbass, you're ruining my chance. I have the upper hand, but right now Fury's hired goons are on their way to kill us." And then we get a quick panel of the Ultimates like skydiving down from the sky, and I thought it was pretty cool. But
Does he have a parachute?
Does Captain America? I don't think he does. I noticed that also. I'm like, wow, he's going for it.
You know, the opening scene of Winter Soldier?
Oh, yeah. And that's an opening scene of the Ultimates, right? That happens in the Ultimates, I think.
Oh, yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So he's a pro at this. This isn't
Yeah.
his first rodeo.
Yeah. And Otto's thinking or Norman is still all thinking this to himself. He's like, "This is why you fail, Otto. This is why you are the way that you are," because he's just like trying to fight instead of like thinking about escaping. And he grabs Otto's metal arm and throws a big fireball at him. But then Doc Ock quickly smacks him up with his other arm, and he's like, "Oh, you just want to fight me, Norman. You just keep on being you." And I'm like, these guys are both such dumbasses. Doc Ock like sees him, immediately starts fighting, and Osborn's like, "This is just why you lose, because you just fight." And then Norman throws one punch, and he's like, "Oh, Norman, always trying to fight. We could be working together." Like these idiots. So then Electro jumps in with an assist, and he electrocutes Doc Ock, telling Norman that he's going to need work once they finish their breakout. And Osborn is thinking to himself, he's like, oh, this is Electro, Max Dillon. I know him. And then he says out loud, he's like, okay, there will be work next week. And then he thinks to himself again, he's insane. This is actually a really great window into Norman Osborn's mind, because he's not as crazy as you thought. When you were like, we've seen the thought bubbles of him before, and he's like this crazy person. He's not like that anymore. He's very coherent and
he's calculating.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's very funny. It's very funny to see a guy and then to that's always a good bit when someone's like, oh yeah, this is my friend Zach, and then they turn to their other friend, they're like, he's crazy or something, like it's a good bit.
I saw it almost as like the literal voice and then the voice the audience hears are so, discordant with each other. It's funny. It's like, in Arrested Development, Michael says something like, I've never had crawfish. And then the narrator's like, Michael had indeed had crawfish 3 times that week.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's exactly it. So sorry about the coughing, listeners. Electro flies away saying, good to see you again. We almost took out the White House that one time. Good times.
Which is a subtle reminder to readers that if they haven't yet, to pick up Ultimate 6.
And to remember Max Verstappen, whoever died in that one issue. Mark Hearth Michelson, yeah. Max Verstappen is a IndyCar driver, like a NASCAR driver or some sort of driver. And then the Goblin, so he tries to escape also. He tries to jump away from a big swarm of helicopters coming after him, but he gets shot down into the lake around the Triskelion. And as the helicopters all look for him, and they're like, we confirmed hit, we see the Goblin sitting and waiting on the bottom of the lake floor before jumping up and destroying the helicopters in the air. And as he's doing this, his internal monologue is just like rambling about Fury. And he's like, they'll crucify you on national television for this, for all of this damage happening. And we see a wide shot of the whole city, and we can kind of see the destruction at the Triskelion being caused. And this would I'm just upset that Fury, we aren't gonna get to see his reaction to this.
Yeah, I think that's almost funny too, is like he thinks he's doing all of this for, to what? To piss off a guy who's not even on Earth anymore?
Well, I'm sad that he's not getting his moment.
Out.
He's been imagine you've been tortured. You've had your son I forgot. Norman Osborn's kind of been ranting about this like in his head the whole time also. He's like, you put me in a cell, you took my son away from me. You did this and that, and now it's all coming back to haunt you, and he's got him, but he's not gonna get to enjoy it.
Yep.
So Osborn turns back into human form, and somehow he is like,
hold on,
wandering.
Sorry, can I say something about the panel just before that?
You absolutely can.
I think we got him for a couple reasons. So I think they keep going back and forth on if the Triskelion is supposed to be in the Hudson or the East River, right? And I think it's always been presented as being way up towards Midtown. And in one of these shots, it seems like we can see the Empire State Building, which would show that it's Midtown. But then, surprisingly, there's a building that doesn't exist behind it that's taller. So that's kind of confusing as to what we're actually looking at. But then also, in another shot, we've got helicopters over what looks to be Battery Park. And they say... head due, they're getting someone's radioing in and saying head due south towards the George Washington Bridge, but do not engage. John, the George Washington Bridge is all the way up at the very top of the island of Manhattan. If they're at the very southern tip of Manhattan, how the are they turning due south to the George Washington Bridge that's way north of them? And are we in Midtown or are we at the southern tip of Manhattan? We have now talked about 3 different geological areas. It'd be like if they were saying, okay, well...
Oh, I'm getting bored. Okay, we got him. We get it. Put the alarms in, Zach. Sorry. Go on. Do go on.
Their geography just doesn't make sense. They got to look at a map when they write this.
I'm glad you're here to notice that, because I never would have. Okay, we got him. So Osborn is walking naked through a crowd of people. He's sneaking around, and somehow he manages to get a thing of clothes that are just being hung up, and he sneaks out. You know how people put on disguises and sneak out? That's what Osborn does. And then we catch up with his lawyer, Osborn's lawyer, and he's on the phone with a call girl, an escort, we can assume, because the only line we get to hear from him is, "I want you to wear those black leather boots with the..." And then he gets a knock on the door, and it's Norman Osborn. And he asks his lawyer for his rainy day fund, saying that it's a rainy day and he needs to borrow some clothes. And he tells his lawyer to set up a meeting with, some sort of a publicist or a news show, because he wants to go on the air and tell his story. And then we cut to a news story, and it's more of my favorite type of panels that we see, because it's that thing that they do where they put a news panel up and then they put all the text being said right next to it that we both love to read. And it's just a news story about the Triskelion getting blown up and all of the villains escaping. And they say they don't know what happened to Norman Osborn. It's a mystery until tonight. And they've got an exclusive interview with Norman Osborn. And before we go to that, though, we see Carol Danvers talking to the president back at the Triskelion. And she says, Magneto is still locked up, but everyone else escaped. And I just hate that, Zach. This is the second time they've cheesed us with we've got Magneto in the Triskelion, and then 2 pages later, a big Triskelion breakout happens, and they're like, okay, luckily Magneto didn't break out.
Free my boy, he didn't do nothing wrong.
Magneto never does anything wrong.
That's going to be real funny here in a few weeks.
Are we going to get some Magneto in this storyline?
Not this one, but it's coming up.
Okay. And then they see this interview with Norman Osborn on TV, and he's saying that they took away his son, his home, and his company and threw him in jail, and all he ever tried to do was help America. He was just trying to make the super soldier serum and for Nick Fury, and then Fury stole all of his stuff and threw him in jail and, didn't give him a trial or anything. And as he's doing this interview where he's crying on the outside and he's like, I can't believe they did this to me, he's thinking to himself, I'm burying you alive. You, your president, your heroes, all of you. And I haven't forgotten about you, Peter Parker. I could blurt out all your secrets right here, Peter. But I still need you, Peter. You are living proof of my genius. And I'm not done with you yet. And we see Peter and Mary Jane walking, getting ice cream, and they stop in front of this big television display with a million TVs, all of Norman Osborn's interview. And we just see Peter and Mary Jane's face, and as we see Norman Osborn's internal monologue say, my boy. I think what would have been interesting is every time Norman says they took away my son in this issue,
he said my boy.
Says my boy. Yeah.
I think it would
I
be,
actually went back and did a re look through to see if he did, and I just didn't notice, but he didn't.
I think it would have been a cool touch for the entire series if every time they have Norman say "my boy," he's talking about Peter, and every time they have him say "my son," he's talking about Harry.
Yeah. Well, I think he is. He probably is. They probably do that.
Well, they conflated the two just here.
Well, no, because Fury did take away his son. You know,
that's true.
I was saying it would have been better if he said "my boy" because he doesn't care about Harry. You know,
right?
He cares about Peter. Obviously.
I think that's the implication.
Yeah. Okay, what'd you think?
It was good. I didn't like it as much as the other one. I'll give it 7.5 out of 10. Escaped criminals from the Triskelion.
Yeah, same thing. It was good. I didn't like it as much as the other one either. There's no Peter in this one. You know, there's no Magneto.
What do you think about Stuart Immonen's art?
I like it. I am not as knowledgeable about art as you are at all, but you know, just looks like a good, well-drawn comic book to me. So honestly, I probably wouldn't even notice that anything was different in this one.
If we hadn't talked it up for a long time.
This one's mostly action. So like you said, it you know, mostly Stuart Immonen's things, when it looks different, it's when he tries to do those faces with the like teeny tiny eyes. And I just don't like the way the people look when they're drawn like that. And he's not the only one that does that art style. Like some people, we've read stuff before where it's like that. But that's where I look at things and I'm like, oh, that looks weird. You know?
Yeah. I'm realizing I think he's even changed how he draws faces like a couple years from when this was released, when he was doing all new X-Men, because this doesn't even look like the faces that he draws in that series. But the action is just pretty consistently good in both.
Yeah. Yeah, 7.5 escaped convicts, not heroes. Yep, I like it. That's a good one.
Hell yeah. So, we got anything else?
I don't know. We talked about so much at the beginning. Is that it? Are we done with Spider-Man things?
I think we're done with Spider-Man things.
Wow. I don't really have that much else, Zach. Okay. I have been continuing my X-Men movie rewatch, and I think I finished out pretty much. The only ones I still have to do now are the original 3 X-Men, which I only haven't rewatched those because I've watched them all a million times. But I did X-Men Origins Wolverine, and I watched Wolverine, and I watched Logan this past week. And,
have you watched New Mutants?
No, I'm not going to watch that one. I don't care about that one. And they're all fine. All fine movies. X-Men Origins, not as bad as the hate it gets. Pretty fun stuff.
Will.i.am is in it. How can it be bad?
I know. And Gambit gets some lines. And it's just pretty fun.
All right, cool.
So there you go. What do you have? We can't just go from Spider-Man to ending in like a minute and a half.
Okay,
so we have to talk about something, Zach.
Yesterday I took friend of the pod, correspondent in the field, Alyssa, to the airport. She's going to be spending like a month and a half in Romania.
Yep, I remember. School. Yeah, very cool. Digging up stuff, right?
Looking at bones that have already been dug up.
Very cool.
Yeah, so hoping that goes well.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to remind you to watch as many of these Doctor Who episodes as you can burn through. Just put them on in the background, Zach, just so I can talk about them to someone.
Okay, will do.
You know? Because there are some good ones. We're having some fun again.
It sounds like it.
We're having some fun, okay?
I'm interested in this Black Mirror one.
Yeah, it's actually it's pretty good. You'll be like, oh man, it's just you'll be like, wow, social media, right?
Am I right?
Who would have thought? People really are always looking at their phones these days.
What
Okay,
an observation.
that one's called Dot and Bubble.
Okay.
So now at the very least, you got to watch 73 Yards and you've got to watch Dot and Bubble. And this most recent one that just came out yesterday, it's called Rogue. It's good. They're all pretty good now. But you don't have to watch all of them. Just
I'll see what I can do.
yeah, definitely. All right.
I've got a jam of the week.
Yes.
This is in my mind, one of the best songs ever written. The guitar work is just beautiful on it. It is Accident Prone by Jawbreaker, since apparently I am accident prone.
Yep, you are. Thank you to Ian Hickey for our music and Alyssa Seaman for the artwork. And thank you all for listening and leaving us a review or a comment. You can find us, the First Read Ultimate Spider-Man podcast, on Spotify or Apple Music or anywhere else that you listen to podcasts. And you can come and chat with us or leave us a comment on Instagram at First Read Podcast. Send us an email at firstreadspidey@gmail.com or find us on YouTube, First Read Ultimate Spider-Man Podcast. See you next week.
See ya.